Hello everyone, my name is Edrem, animatronic puppet VTuber, and today I want to talk a little bit about patch 7.35. All of the Deep Dungeon things, all of the Arkveld things, get my kind of thoughts out there now that we've had a bit of time to play around with it. Just a little heads up, I have moved house since our previous video, so that's why the puppet now doesn't have a green screen, and it's also going to slightly move as I talk. It's going to just rotate because it doesn't have a base motor to keep it like turning left and right anymore. It's just free floating, so that's unfortunate, but we'll fix those things over time. It's already moving quite fast, actually. Annoying. There we go. The benefit though is it's now in my room, so I can quickly fix things. So Deep Dungeon overall, kind of love it. Just a little heads up though is that I have not cleared Quantum. I have seen the fight. I know of the general stuff about it. We'll talk about the drama about it, but we'll get to that in a bit. The Deep Dungeon itself is not that difficult compared to other ones. Certainly not compared to like Eureka Orthos, right? Whereas Eureka Orthos was like difficult pretty much straight away, especially if you're playing solo. This one has a far more gradual difficulty curve, which I like because this is the one where they're getting more people into Pug It, right? There's been like a more emphasis on going in, pugging the content, doing it for randoms, helping out, and potentially even doing it weekly as well. And that so far has been really good. I have had some total wipes on some floors. Nothing, I believe, below floor 60. That's when it starts to get like, okay, you can screw up some things there. We had a wipe to the chameleons. We had a bad wipe in floor like 96 to an Acheron. We had a few things there, but it wasn't all that bad because you can restart at floor 70 and you just lose a little bit of time. So overall, quite like it. I love the challenge log as a weekly thing, right? Now, I would like if there's a better UI for this, because the challenge log UI is just kind of very, very basic. But putting this in as a, like, each week, please clear certain floors of the Deep Dungeon and you get these rewards. Great idea. Great idea. Because what this gives you is items for rarer stuff, like the hairstyle, but it also gives you items from Quantum. So I think this is going to be a general trend, because Arkfeld does this a little bit as well, but you might see a trend going forward where Savage and the harder difficulties of things will give you stuff faster or let you grind things out. Whereas if you're a more casual player, you can get these things, but it's going to either be a lot more RNG. That's what Arkveld is with the cart mount, or like a weekly lockout, which is what this is. These things here, the Sack of First Light, you get them either from the weekly Deep Dungeon Clear or from Quantum. There's no other way to get them, so if you're a casual player, you're going to be doing this like each week. But I think it's fine because it gives an incentive to go in and do a Deep Dungeon each week, especially because of its more puggable nature now. They want people to always be here. And it's kind of working. It's kind of working. Like, this is just right before live letter is about to start. And there's people here. There's people here queuing on in. I've seen people pop in and out of existence constantly. It's pretty good. It's a lot better even on like a Tuesday as people's reset goes, and you'll get people going through it. And you don't have to clear all 100 floors, right? Like maybe you're super casual and you're very time limited. You can get to floor 30 relatively easy enough, or I believe floor 20 if you're just going for these, the Sack of First Lights, floor 30, and then you can also start at 50 and go to 70. So overall, that's like, what? Because I think you can start at floor 20? Where can you start? Oh, I need to delete reset points. Okay, you can start at 21, or you can start at 51. So overall, if you're just going for Sack of First Lights, you only have to do 30 floors a week. which is pretty good. Wow, the puppet rotates so much. Hold up. I don't know what's going to fix that. So overall, that's pretty good. Now, the awards for Quantum. This is probably going to get into a bit of a deeper conversation because I don't necessarily mind them. And I've also seen some like misinterpretation of what it is. Right? So for those who don't know anything, Quantum is a scale in difficulty fight. It goes from Quantum 15, which is the starting difficulty, all the way up to Quantum 40. Quantum 40 is the only one that has its own specific award where it gives you a title. Otherwise, you scale it up to get more Sacks of First Light. Right? So it's like, okay, there is a reason to try and redo it over and over again. And there are pretty good awards, but it's obviously not what people want. And the problem I see with this is people always want gear. They always want some kind of way to get more powerful. Whereas this Quantum, it gives you the Forgiven Mimicry Resonator, the Pilgrim's Protector Horn, and the Blue Pixie Parasol is Sack of First Light items. So those are the ones that are specific to Quantum, although of course people doing Deep Dungeon Weeklies can eventually get them. Yeah, I'm currently on 28 of these, so I can eventually get the Blue Pixie Parasol. It's been 3 whole weeks of reclears. So, it'll take me a while. And I see some of the stuff about this. I don't really know what is a good solution for this, though. I can see people talking about glam. The only problem with glam is you end up having to make a lot of glam in this game. If it's weapon glam, right? It's 21 weapons, I believe, you'd have to make for each thing. That could be a fair amount of effort. You're going from having 3 awards to having 24. It also depends on what kind of things that happens there. You could have it be like, okay, we take the deep dungeon weapon and we add a special glow to it, and we also make the glow mostly the same for each weapon, so it cuts down the amount of work. But would people still want that though? I don't know. I think a low criterion is something that people point at. It's like, oh man, those weapons were like amazing awards. But each of those had very, very unique effects between them, right? They all had very different effects that matched their kind of style of the weapon. I don't know how well that would work there. The other thing that I see, and this is kind of going into a broader topic about this, is the idea of acquiring some kind of player power. Now, I use player power separately to the term like gear, although obviously they both contribute in the same way. You know, getting higher eye level gear will give your player more power. But there's other ways to do that as well. Ether Pool gear, for example, in Deep Dungeon, is a form of player power. Magicite in Eureka is a form of player power. It makes you stronger. The gear in there, the elemental gear, which has the Eureka stats on it, that's gear that also gives power. So there's multiple different ways to do this. Bosja had it as well with the Rays of Valor and Rays of Metal. I can't remember what they're called. But the stacking debuffs that you get 10 of over time. And that's typically as like a reward system for players for doing the content, and it makes the content easier, but I don't know how well that would fit in here. And we've got a little bit of problem with this over time, right? Is that we can't make the gear too strong. We can't make the player power too strong, because what will happen is the community will fragment around it. We see this in other games, right? 14 is a game that doesn't necessarily require like gear checking players to go into raids. You meet the minimum item level or close enough to it, you can generally go up to a PF. PFs might have an eye level that's slightly higher, but overall your gear is not going to make a huge difference to what you can do in a fight. Certainly some, but not to the point that you're excluding people who don't have the gear. So that's the problem, where you can't make this player power that gets you too strong in content where people can be choosy about who to bring into the group. That's why it works. It works pretty well in, you know, Eureka, where it's just pugs. It works quite well in Bosja and Zadnor, where it's just large-scale field content. When Deliver Originate Savage came out, we didn't have the raise buff. So I think that ties into it as well. Whereas now I feel like maybe you can get carried enough by other people in that. But I mean, that's also very large-scale content, right? Like it's 24 players. Kind of depends. But you can see the issue there of if you make stuff that makes players too powerful, then what happens is the community starts to exclude players that don't have that power, which then means that those players might find it difficult to actually get that power, and you get this like cyclic nature of, well, if you didn't start raiding on day one, you're never going to catch up because people don't want you in the group. So I can see the problem there, and I can see why the game developers do not want to add stuff into the game that makes you stronger in general content, which is be gear, or specific content, which is be the specific player powers. Wow, the puppet moves again. I'll get that motor fixed eventually. So it's tough. It's one of those things where I don't really know what the fix is, other than like not really just kind of doing what's being done. It's probably something I'd have to make a more proper video on it. But it's at the current moment, it's like I'm fine if Quantum not giving any kind of like player power award in terms of gear or something unique that makes Quantum easier in the future. Unless it was like a minor thing, like it would have to be equivalent to like 5-10% buff at most. And even then, would people actually want that? That's the other problem, is if it's a small buff and it doesn't actually matter too much, people aren't going to think it's a worthwhile award. That's why the buffs in Zadnor were 50% by the end. Was it 50% or was it 25%? I think it was 5% per stack, and you get 10 stacks. Yeah. So there's stuff there. As for the actual awards, I see them being like, okay, let's cater more to Deep Dungeon. I don't know if Quantum is actually going to be all that successful in the future. The other problem I see here is that, obviously as a scaling difficulty system, they want people to like pick the difficulty that's right for them. Unfortunately, it seems like that hasn't really happened. It seemed like many of the raiders have gone in and been like, let's go Quantum 40. Straight up, let's just go for the hardest one and learn that. So I don't see it as being like a good stepping stone into this content. Like I don't see people going and going, let's do like a Quantum 15. Let's learn the fight. Let's clear it that way. And then as we do it, we'll step up the difficulty to, you know, Quantum 20, Quantum 25, and we'll learn that way and get more into raiding. I don't really see it doing that. The mechanics are similar. There's some added punishments for the harder difficulties, but it's mostly just like leeway. You still need to learn all the mechanics. So it's tough there. I don't think that works all that well. I think Quantum 40 is nice, but it's going to be like the way that everyone compares it to other content, right? It's just going to be Quantum 40. Other games, right? If we compare to something like a Mythic Plus system, other games, there is like a progression. So you have to go through the lower difficulties to get up to the higher difficulties, because there is that player power that is going to help you. If you're really skillful, you know, you can skip some difficulties, but you still want to get that gear to help you later on at the higher end of stuff. Whereas 14 didn't really have that. 14 was you go in on the day straight away, you're as pretty much geared as you're going to get, because it's just based on your ether pool level. Go in and do it. So I don't know. I think them maybe advertising it as like you can have a bit of a road race for this was kind of a bit of a mistake, because in my mind, the ideal kind of system like this is it would take people a long time to actually reach something like Quantum 40, because they need to go in, they need to clear it, and they need to get more skills and not skills, but more player power in some way. But as a like way to lock them off from the later tiers, like, oh, we cannot physically make the DPS check of, you know, Quantum 25. We need to go gear up more on Quantum 20. That's a way to add longevity to it and to get more people to do it. I don't necessarily know if that would be good or well received, but it's interesting. It's an interesting thought experiment. I think that's the big thing I take away from Quantum 40 is an interesting thought experiment. How do people interact with this content? How does the community form around it? How does Party Finder react to this more than anything? I don't really care too much about like the statics because they're just doing whatever they're doing. But the general PF community and how they're doing things, we'll see there. Speaking of the PF and the general community though, let's talk about Arkveld. Arkveld was a delight. Loved it. I really liked this fight. Went in, did it on launch. We did the normal, which surprisingly is mostly the same as extreme. There's just a lot more telegraphs and it's a lot more forgiving in certain mechanics. And you don't have limit cut. We'll give it that. That's the big mechanic there is limit cut. But I also really like what they're doing here. Hey, you can get everything technically from normal, except for, I believe, the enhanced weapons. But if you want to get a better drop rate of things, that's when you go in and do the extreme. Like, okay, cool, we've got this. People want to farm it on normal, they can. People want to just buy the mount off someone else that sells on the market board. P.S. You should buy your my mount on the market board, because I got 2 cart horns. They can. If people want to grind out for 99 Arkveld certificates for the mount, they've got the pity system in, so they'll eventually get at that too. And I like it. I've seen some complaints about like the armor. You know, people wanted Arkveld armor. I'm fine with the Monster Hunter armor. I think the weapons look silly, but also they're silly in the same way that they look silly in Monster Hunter Wilds. So it matches, right? I don't really like the Arkveld weapon designs. But for some people, they're great. For the ninja, they look silly, and I kind of like how silly that looks. So overall, that's pretty good. The extreme was fun. I've been duty findering extreme because I'm on JP server, so we can actually just use duty finder to get extreme groups. That's been really good. People are being really good about doing the mechanics. It's difficult in that same way that I describe as like Barb Reacher as difficult, where there's a lot of mechanics, there's a lot of things going off, but the punishment for failing everything is not that extreme, right? There's no damage downs, I believe, but there's a lot of vuln stacks, and you're going to see a lot of groups get a lot of vuln stacks because it's very easy to get hit by quite a few mechanics. But as long as your healers are on the ball, or you've got your own potion to heal you, you'll probably be able to struggle through and survive. I believe, yeah, on our first clear, we eventually made it through and we got to the Enrage, and then we actually cleaned up Act and got a lot better at certain mechanics, and then we were clearing it like a minute and a half before the Enrage, 2 minutes before the Enrage, so that's good there. I think Vuln stacks as a mechanic in these kinds of fight help players in a group learn, because they're not heavily punished for other players' mistakes. There's very little in this will actually punish you for other players' mistakes, and that's kind of what you want out of an extreme. It's far more like focus on your own mechanics. Limit cut's really the only one where if one player's in the wrong spot, you'll wipe the whole group. So that was good. That was good. I hope it's got a lot of life to it. I think the cart horn being market board tradable means I'm probably going to keep farming it for quite a while. So I currently have 55 certificates. The fact that it can drop, it is overall really good. I've also got 30 weapon coffers. I don't know why they thought to make it drop a weapon coffer every single time. I would have been fine with the standard system of like rolling a weapon coffer. No one needs that many Arkveld weapon coffers unless we can desync them into like a cart horn next patch. That might be cool. Yeah. Overall, those are kind of my thoughts on this. it's an interesting patch for like what's coming in the future. I'd be very interested if they're going to keep these kinds of systems going where normal is a way to get stuff from the more hardcore content over time. Like, I think about that, we have a little tiny bit of that in the raids where, hey, if you want like a tombstone weapon, you can eventually get it if you do enough weeks of normal free clears, right? You get your like whatever current, I think it's like a lightsaber or something weapon token. Now you get 7 of them, you can trade in for an item to get you a tombstone weapon. I could see something like that in the future where, hey, maybe you want the mount that drops in Savage. Well, guess what? It's going to have a small chance to drop now in the normal version as well. Or you're going to have like, oh, you can get, you know, 20 weeks, 15 weeks, 10 weeks of re-clears. You can trade in that item from normal that you get once per week, and you can buy the mount of that. I could see that being a very interesting way of like keeping the more casual players engaged and doing the content. Because currently I've seen a lot of people complain about like, oh, the daily roulette. Oh, they're always sick of the daily roulette. So give them the weekly roulette. Why not? Also see, I've been a big proponent of like giving more variety and more reason to do things each week. This is also why I'm excited, because we're going to be getting the Mogtome event soon, which I really like because it incentivizes the entire server to go and do something like ocean fishing just 1 week. So we'll see how that works. Anyway, I gotta go fix up the puppet, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!